Hi there, I'm Dr. Trudy Johnson. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the states of Colorado, Tennessee, and associate therapist in Arizona. I'm also a certified clinical trauma specialist with Arizona Trauma Institute. I have been in the world of post abortion my entire adult life, beginning with my abortion at age 19 and going through that healing process that encompassed many, many years, and then going on to get my licensures so that I could help in the area of professional therapy to bring the world the message of abortion grief. In my studies, I learned a lot about trauma and a lot about grief. I also learned that trauma grief is different than regular grief. And this is the missing piece that I would really like to share with you today. I believe that we might be missing a piece to some of this grief work of helping women be free, because we need to look at abortion grief in the same way that we look at trauma grief. First of all, any kind of trauma grief will begin for that person who was in the trauma. They will have an intense loyalty to the evilness of it. They'll have an intense loyalty to the trauma, just like women have an intense loyalty to their secret. So I'm going to share with you today the trauma grief cycle and see if you don't agree that maybe we are missing a couple of pieces in the puzzle to how we can help women get unstuck and healed. First of all, we're going to look at, so we just pretend like you're in my classroom here. And first of all, we look at the situation. So this is the situation of the trauma event. So in that situation of trauma, the main emotion under that is going to be confusion. So if we think about a woman being, after her abortion, she could be very confused because many women are taken aback. They are surprised that they're so emotional. They're surprised that they have so much. Maybe they're going to have nightmares. They might have a lot of emotion again, and also a lot of grief. That catches them off guard because they think the abortion is going to stop their emotional troubles. Instead, they probably are going to get more. But in light of that, many women are very confused because our culture says it's legal, it's right, it's a woman's right, it's her body, and this is what we can do, and there are very little ramifications from it. And to add the double whammy of they think they're the only ones feeling this way. So there's a lot of confusion surrounding the situation of an abortion choice. So that's one thing that happens. The next stage, the next step in this trauma grief cycle is going to be denial. So denial says nothing happened and it didn't hurt. So the brain does a wonderful thing. We're very fearfully and wonderfully made. The brain will give us a little place to put this trauma content so that we are not plagued by it. If it's too overwhelming, it says, here, let me take it and put it over here. We're into what I call a trauma emotion box, is what I call it. But under this denial place of nothing happened and it didn't hurt, is the emotion of fear. And it can be very intense fear. So whenever we get a situation like this that's overwhelming, the brain doesn't know what to do with it. The brain has a very amazing capacity to store this content. And so it puts it here into what we call the sympathetic nervous system. So that's the nervous system that helps us respond to a threat. And so if something is confusing and fearful, it's going to seem like a threat. And so this content surrounding the abortion is going to all get stored in this sympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic nervous system does fight, so it helps us respond, flight, so that we can stay safe. But the other two places that it provides is it provides numbness and kind of a freeze state. So what happens is this abortion information gets stored into this sympathetic nervous system. I'll let you see that a little bit better. Sympathetic nervous system right there. And there's going to be this content's going to go in here, and the brain helps numb that information or freeze that information. I have had clients who, when I'm working with them, we think we're working on one abortion, and then as we get going, they realize there's more. So I've had as many as 5 abortions under that one that have been numbed out, or there's just frozen content and they're unable to look at those additional abortions, or women who have completely, I believe, truly blocked out the experience and don't remember their abortions. And so this is what happens in this trauma grief cycle. And so this is where many women stay stuck for years. This is where I was for 18 years before I was able to start bubbling up some of this so I could get healed. And so this is where many women stay. And so what happens is there's like a big, huge wall here that protects this information and keeps it from being accessed. Again, it's stored away in a numb or freeze state. So eventually, though, it's something's going to happen. Who knows what? It's some sort of trigger. Having grandchildren can be a trigger for many women. Once they hold that grandbaby first time in their arms, that can be a trigger. So this is, so what happens is when we go over the wall in this trauma grief cycle, then this stage is called secrecy break. This is why that Pat Layton was surrendering the secret, such an awesome name, very good. Secrecy break is whenever I finally admit this content that's been stored. So as I began working with these ladies, I'm like, oh yes, finally they broke the secret, not realizing, wow, the emotion that's under that is anger. It's very surprised because I'm thinking now we can get her to the pain and she can grieve. No, after we break the secret, that what the emotion under that is anger. And so what happens is a very intense anger, even rage, or if we have nowhere to put this, no one to talk to, we don't think we have permission to be angry even, or something we chose, then it's going to be intense depression. So that's inside anger. It's going to go into intense depression. And so I've had ladies who come to me who say they tried to get in a group, but they're like, I feel so bad because all these ladies are crying and they're so grieving, and all I feel is anger. So you may get some women in your groups who are feeling this anger, and they some of the times it can be so rageful, they're just unable to go on into the next step. So that next step is what we call victimization consciousness. So this is where this information finally, I get it into my conscious brain. So we have another nervous system here, and this is the parasympathetic. So this is where we can work through a problem. We can solve things. We can think clearly. We can look at something truthfully. And so finally, when it gets out of the sympathetic nervous system, it's able to go over here to conscious nervous system. And the emotion under here is pain. So this is where these abortion support groups work. mostly is, this is where such great work gets done, is when those ladies are in pain and are able to process through the pain that they're feeling and the grief. The challenge is we have so many women stuck over here, we're unable to get them over the fence, and then they think they've got to be all in deep grief when all they're feeling is anger. So they just try to put it back in the box. So I believe this could be a very important piece to our abortion healing models that we're looking at, just to even know this information. This is why I wrote my book, which is just a simple little self-help plan. I'm calling it CPR, Choice Processing and Resolution, Facing Grief After Abortion Without Fear. So this is a resource that can be used in the secular world. Why? Because it has no scripture in it. Why? Because I'm trying to just help women get over the wall. I'm trying to help them have permission to grieve. And so many women are stuck in this stage. They're never going to go over the wall. And this is why we needed a resource that could be used even with a professional therapist in her office. There are neat little exercises in here that she can go through with her clients to talk about the abortion, to start getting it out, start getting it in out of this frozen and numb state over here into where they could actually process through it. So that's one reason I wrote the book. Another reason I did get requests for a resource to help the unchurched. Again, scripture is going to be very triggering for them, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is for them right now. This is where they are. This is kind of the resource I wish I could have found several years earlier than in my quest, that I would have probably read something like this, but I couldn't touch anything with scripture in it. And so this is kind of the resource I created for me and where I was in my journey. Additionally, something you need to know about this resource is that it does not have the word abortion in it. So what happened, the only place abortion is in the cover. And that's because my publisher said you have to put it on the cover. People are not going to know what your book is about, especially when you say CPR. They're going to think it's a medical thing. And I'm like, yes. And I'm going, yes, well, it is CPR, right? Anyway, so the word abortion does not appear in this book. And this is what I learned in my 6.5 years working in a brief intensive therapy agency where people came for a week or 2 weeks. Specifically, we worked mostly with pastors and pastors' wives. And whenever there was a suspected abortion, I would get them and we would work. The challenge is most of them were angry. Most of them were in confusion and denial. And the minute I would say abortion, have you had an abortion? We're going to work on your abortion. Complete numb freeze and would go into here. And I could see the shutdown and I would get nowhere with them. They would, if anything, just say, I'm not talking about it, not going there. I've already processed it. It's all done. And so was unable to talk with them. So eventually I got very creative and I started calling it the A word. So even calling it the A word was very helpful. They all knew what I meant when I said the A word. Eventually I changed it to what I feel like is a real explanation, and that is voluntary pregnancy termination, or VPT. So they were able to talk and say VPT without saying abortion, and in that we were able to get them over the wall, help them process through the anger and feel the pain of it finally, eventually. So this is not to validate abortion or say, yes, I believe in it. All I'm saying is I just want to help women get over the wall. And if the word abortion triggers them, which it does, it's going to trigger mostly the secular women into shutdown, and they're going to put all of that emotional content right back in the box and re-traumatize them again. And so I felt like it was a good choice in my situation to change the verbiage on that. Again, not to cause any kind of validation for abortion, but to help these ladies get over the wall. So the minute I changed the wording on it, I was able to really make a lot of progress in my counseling sessions whenever I was working for these ladies who were in complete confusion and fear about their past abortions. So it's very important, I believe, to understand how even that word abortion triggers these women to go completely into that numb or freeze state, and keep all the content back into a place of fear or confusion. So I founded my website, missingpieces.org, and on there, there's a lot of free downloadable resources for specifically for professionals because they need to be informed of abortion grief too. Ladies are coming to them. I've had requests. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle it. They're trying to handle it like regular grief and go to that pain, and it's not going to work. And so this is, so I have downloadable resources for professionals. And also on there, I have a link to the first ever course for professionals to learn about abortion grief. And they can earn 6 CEU course credits. These CEUs are what they have to have every year to qualify for their licensure. And these CEUs have been approved by the state of Ohio licensing board. So it's the first ever abortion grief information brought to the professional counseling world. It's very exciting. Go on there and they can click and take that little course and learn a lot, especially learning. As I really emphasize in that course that once you get the ladies past their anger, they have to get in a support group. And I believe that we could be a really good circle of healing for women who've had abortions, in that professionals, because it's so confidential, they can handle them through this stage, get them over the wall, and then they hand them off to the support group, which is the ideal place where they're going to finish their healing. Again, this is not about healing. This is about getting them where they can get healed. And so I'm excited about these concepts that I believe that were brought to me in a divine way. And I'm excited about this project that we're all involved in. So I would encourage you to go to that website, and especially if you're professional, you can get a lot of information there. Even if you're, even for any of you to take that course to learn more about this trauma bonding and how that impacts a woman who's had an abortion. So my motto is let's take abortion aftercare into the 21st century. Let's start looking at all the missing pieces, and let's do this in an excellent, amazing way, because our answer for many of these women is to help them get out of denial, out of this confusion and fear, help them over that wall so they can get into those support groups. Thank you.